havacılık sektörünü konuşuyoruz. Özellikle yer ve yolcu işletme tarafını, hizmetleri tarafını konuşuyor olacağız. 2025'te büyüme hedefleri nasıl? Hem yurt içinde Türkiye'de hem de yurt dışında hangi yatırımları planlıyorlar? Ağlarını nasıl genişletiyorlar konuşacağız. Hangi ülkeler, hedef ülkeler konuşuyor olacağız. Çelebi Havacılık Grubu CEO'su Dave Dorner sorularımızı cevaplayacak. Mr. Dorner, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So there are a lot of things to talk about, and it's a huge sector. And we are very glad that Çelebi Aviation is a 100% Turkish business. So let's first evaluate 2024, last year. How was your performance last year? Have you reached your goals? And in terms of your expansions and your growth number. So what can you tell us briefly for 2024?
Okay. Well, maybe I can start a little bit with the underlying, just the overall environment,
yes.
The market for us. So obviously we're in the business of dealing with passengers and cargo for aviation. When we look at the overall global market, it was a record year. So it was the highest level of passenger revenue kilometers flown in the world ever. So beating the pre-pandemic levels by about 4% and up about 10.5% over 2023. So the underlying situation was very good for us. For Çelebi itself, we had a record year. I would say we had a record year in all of our countries. So we were up about 30% in terms of revenues in euro terms from 23 to 24. Profitability was very strong. Roughly speaking, I would say about 30% profitability, which is very good for our sector. So we're very, very happy with the outcome. And as I said, that was true in Turkey. We definitely had a great year, but it was also true in Germany, in Hungary, and in India, which are our main markets. So we had a very nice performance in 2024.
Okay, and approximately a profitability in Turkey, how was?
Well, profitability in Turkey is quite strong. It represents a little bit, just around 50% of our revenue and a little more than 50% of our profits. So you can see it's a little more profitable than some of our other businesses, but marginally so, I would say. So it's let's say the engine of our growth, and we've been in Turkey for 67 years. So we were founded in Turkey, obviously. One of the first independent ground handlers globally anywhere. So that's sort of a nice attribute that we have. And as I say, very strong for Turkey, but strong outside Turkey as well.
Yes. So I know that your goal is to expand more emerging countries, and you have just entered in the market, Indonesian market. So let's talk about this Indonesian market. How is your goal there, your growth, and your expansion? How it will be Indonesian market for you, and why Indonesia actually?
Okay. Well, I'll start with why Indonesia. So we're very excited about our entry. We entered in basically April of 2024. We bought a company there, very small company. But if you look at Indonesia, many people don't know, it's 17,000 islands. So there's a lot of need for transportation across that geography. The actual size of the country from east to west is actually bigger than the United States, continental United States. So it's about 10% larger. It takes almost 9 hours with a stop in Jakarta to fly from east to west. So it's a very, very big country. There's a lot of need within the country for people to travel between locations, for cargo to travel between locations, and obviously for international business and tourism. So it's a very exciting country from that perspective of geography. Size, it's about 280 million people, so it's the fourth largest country population globally. And we looked at the sort of the service provision and the competitors there, and we thought there was value that we could add as Çelebi, and so it represented a really great growth opportunity in our eyes to get into that market. Currently, it's about the 10th largest market globally. We believe it'll probably reach 5th largest market in the next 10 to 15 years. India is currently 5th. India will turn to 3rd, so we would be, in that case, in the 3rd largest market in India, the 5th largest market in Indonesia, and the 10th largest market in Turkey. So we would have 3 of the top 10 global markets that's one of the reasons why we entered.
Nice. So I'm just curious about it. You look when you enter to a new market. You look the potential. Which potential? Like economic potential, population. What are the standards that you are looking for?
Yes.
In a country, in a market.
In a market, yes. Well, let me give you a sense. So
Yes.
we look at what is the penetration, let's say, of air travel, both for cargo and passengers. So if you think about Turkey as an example, Turkey, roughly speaking, is about one trip per person in the country. So roughly one, that doesn't mean everybody flies every year. It means on average, one person, one flight. Spain is roughly 3.5, 3.3. So you could see in a similar type geography, we could grow in Turkey still triple. If you look at a country like India, it's almost 10 times less than Turkey because of their economic development. But you have an opportunity to grow from, let's say, 1.2 trips per passenger, per person, sorry, to, if they reach Turkey, it would be 8 times more, right? So you could go a factor of 8 in India. Similar type numbers apply to Indonesia. So if you have 1.5 billion people in India or 280 million people in Indonesia, and if they double or triple or even 8 times their trips per capita, you have huge growth potential. Okay. So that's definitely one thing that we look at. The other is, as I mentioned in Indonesia, who's providing service? Is the service provision at the right level? Do we think we have something to add that we can improve upon, that we can have a value to that market? And we really do look at what we can add in the market. We think if we win, then we have to make sure that everyone wins, our customers and the other stakeholders, including, and I'm sure we'll come to it, the people that we work with. So that's incredibly important for us.
Yes, because work is important as well. Labor is important because you are huge and very large. So we will come to that. But before, how is European market? There is a potential. Of course, there is no enough potential like India and compared to Indonesia. But how about European market? I know that you are in Frankfurt, which is among the main airports in Europe. And how about other region?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of things I could say there. One is the center of gravity, so to speak, is moving east. So it was North America and Western Europe. That was the highest penetration of air travel. And so obviously they're big, well-established markets, but they're less dynamic. And it's not really what we think of as our strengths. Our strengths are to serve in emerging markets where we can add more to the ecosystem, we think, given our strengths. You mentioned, Europe. We're in Frankfurt, obviously. Yes. We're in Frankfurt only from a cargo perspective. It's one of the leading cargo hubs globally and certainly in Europe. And we wanted to show our cards, show how well we could do in a very, very competitive cargo environment. And we're doing very well there. But that's really why we're there. When we entered Hungary, it was in 2006, and it still was considered, just coming out of communism and really more of an emerging market at that time. Now it's considered
as
Europe, but we came before it was just part of Europe, and so that was another way to show what we could do internationally, and it was our first international market actually.
But you are also satisfied with your Frankfurt and Hungary profits, right?
Very much so, very much so. Yes, we have a leading position, and we are the leader by far in Hungary in terms of our sector. And in Germany, I can't say we're the biggest, but I think we're amongst the best service providers in Hungary. In Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt.
So we're happy with those businesses. But I think as we look forward and for our growth, we'll be looking, as I said, to emerging markets. We won't be so much focused on more European presence.
So your expectation and your strategy for 2025, and also we cannot talk about only a year. So let's say that your strategic goals for middle and long term globally and in Turkey.
Okay. Well, in Turkey, we're in 32 stations. And so there's always room to grow as more stations or more cities get airports.
Because there are more airports than 32.
There are But many of the smaller airports only have one service provider. So the government asks for a tender and they pick one of the competitors to be the only service provider. So there's about 64 airports that have service in Turkey. We're in about 32 of them. So we're roughly speaking about half the markets. But we are very excited about growing with Turkey. So I think that's really the strategy there, is to grow with Turkey. In the 5-year perspective of how do we see the international, we definitely see entering more markets. Obviously, we have to continue to grow in India. There's massive growth potential. We have to grow in Indonesia and reach the potential that we see in Indonesia. But then we see additional markets. We see additional markets in the Middle East, in Africa, and certainly in Southeast Asia. So all three of those regions.
What are the major countries, for example, do you plan for in 5 years?
There's, well, plan and aspire. Let's say we would aspire to be in the Middle East. There are some large growing markets. So Saudi Arabia, for example, has a massive strategy for growth in their tourism sector. We see amazing potential there. We're very interested. We're very active. Whether we'll be there or not, you know, we'll have to see what we can do, but that's definitely a goal. There are some other markets in the Middle East that we're tracking right now. I shouldn't really say maybe specifically because there's some ongoing tender processes and discussions. In Africa, you can imagine there's many smaller countries with small air traffic.
They don't travel a lot.
Well, there's a lot of cross-border, it's economic, there's a lot of cross-border friction actually in terms of visas and so forth to travel within Africa. So I think as that free trade, let's say, gets more and more implemented, I think you'll see growth in Africa, and I think it's necessary. It's always just over the horizon, so hopefully the horizon will come. But there are some very large countries, so countries like Nigeria, countries in North Africa, Algeria, Egypt. So we'd love to be, and we are looking at a couple of alternatives in those geographies. And then Southeast Asia. There's, I was recently on a trip where we went to Malaysia, we went to Indonesia, and obviously we're in Indonesia, but we were there to help support also the bilateral relationships and the trading relationships between Turkey and those countries. So we see that there's a desire to build trade, and that means more people flowing back and forth for business, for tourism, and obviously more goods, cargo flowing back and forth. So we like to look at those, let's say, political alignment as well, and say if this is a country where there's going to be more trade, maybe we can add something.
Okay, so your investment in technology, because when we talk about aviation sector, it's like technology comes to my mind first, and also AI, like artificial intelligence, because globally we talk about, you know, artificial intelligence a lot in every area of business, you know. So how do you make your investment in those areas? How do you use in your services, in your expansions? What are the newest technology sources?
Well, I should say first and foremost, we're, and everyone might say this, but we're definitely a people business. So we employ, as I said, around 15,000 people. And the critical use of technology is really how do we use technology to make that more efficient, to make those people even more efficient than they are. We use it in everything from our training to our service deployment. So if we think about the front line, let's say in the service to the actual customer, we're starting to use, we've always used technology, but we're starting to use more AI. Everything from an airway bill, which is, you know, when you're doing cargo, you have to, you know, have a goods goods receipt. We're using AI there to process better at a higher quality, more efficiently. In the back office, we're also using AI, so it can be useful. We don't use it to actually hire people, but we use it in the process of hiring people to make that process more efficient. So there can be, as I say, frontline applications or back office applications. One of the ones that is very exciting for me is to actually apply AI to video streams. So taking video of the apron, so where we're doing our business, and then having that AI trained to understand what quality and efficiency looks like versus not, and then in real time, seeing if we can improve the quality of service or the efficiency of service using AI through video. So that's really, I would say, one of the most leading edge applications, and we're just working on it, so it's not there yet. But
you are working on it. Okay, and it's important also because technology, especially for your sector, because you are internationally growing, and it's easier to control in a one office everywhere. So it's like sustainability and everything. It's important.
I think consistency really. I mean, one of the things that people, our customers expect from us is the consistency. So if you're dealing with a global airline
And speed.
but they want the same thing. So Turkish Airlines or Lufthansa or British Airways or Singapore Airlines, they want the same thing when they go to Delhi as they do when they go to Istanbul. And so we need to deliver a consistent service that's efficient. And if we can use technology to assure the quality standard that we're reaching and the efficiency, we have a more consistent delivery, and that's what our customers really want from us.
You will continue to make investment in AI and technology, definitely in coming years, maybe more and more.
Absolutely. I think as we grow, and I think you're seeing some consolidation in our global business, and one of the things that people are doing through that consolidation is they're able to apply that technology on a bigger base of business, so the economies of scale.
It's necessary. Okay, and what are the biggest challenges nowadays? Because we see a lot of like accidents as well. Like, so what is the biggest challenges, you know, in the airport, in your sector, facing the aviation sector, and as well the ground handling side?
Okay. Well, I have to say, I know that there's been some things in the news recently, but there are statistics that actually show, even with the most recent, very unfortunate accidents, it's becoming safer and safer. So travel via airline has always been the safest mode of travel. It continues to be the safest mode of travel. But having said that, it's always in our focus. It's absolutely critical. Aviation's notorious for its attention to quality and safety. So, and we have to, as a service provider in that sector, live to that standard. So I see that continuing, and I don't see that changing, and I think it's a very safe way to travel. So be assured. It's actually constantly improving if you look at the actual statistics. There's been some things in the news lately, but it's very safe. In terms of how we see it evolving, I mean, I think the challenges for us are, one of the big challenges, I think, for aviation in general is, there is climate change, there is a concern over emissions. It's not easy you can't fly yet really electric airplanes of large size. So the question is how we can bring down that carbon footprint. And one of the first places that the sector looks, if they can't change the aircraft necessarily, is to look for the service providers on the ground. Airports are going very green, and they're expecting the same from us as a service provider. And so we're investing very heavily in our electric equipment fleet. We're monitoring our carbon footprint. So along with other things like diversity policies and governance policies, but certainly on the environmental front, that's a main push to support aviation with what we can do within that. We can't change the aircraft engines, but we can change what happens on the ground.
Maybe in the future we can change the craft as well, but we never know.
It will come. It will come.
Yes, so just 1.5 to 2 minutes left. So I want to emphasize on your works about female labor, because you give a lot of importance to female employees. So what are you doing in terms of, and how many percentage female employees you have in your business? In Çelebi Aviation, exactly.
Let me first say, I think the overall, just the average percentages sometimes hide some very strange things, like, you have no senior people. So we're very proud of the fact that when we look at our leadership, so manager and above, we're over 30% female. Many of our global competitors, I can tell you, signed up to something called the 25 by 25 pledge, which was to have 25% female by 2025. We're already over 30, so we're ahead of our global competitors in terms of female in senior roles, so not just in junior or frontline. So we're very proud of our, let's say, our history, our legacy. This was true also before I came, so I can't claim responsibility for all of that achievement, certainly. I think of it as not as a number, though. It's not a target. Here's my number that I have to achieve. I think of it as, let's have a fair workplace that's attractive to both men and women to work in, and then we'll see that those people will perform well. Because if you just pick a number and say, now I'm going to have this many of whatever group, people will say, well, they got the job because of that. That's not the case. The case is we try to have a fair workplace, and women will do well, and women will be attracted. And frankly, men will be attracted too because they want a fair work environment.
Okay. Mr. Dorner, thank you for joining us actually, and hope you have a wonderful 2025 and hope to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Evet, üst düzeyde havacılık sektörünü konuştuk. Çelebi Havacılık Grubu CEO'su Dave Dorner sorularımızı cevapladı. Haftaya görüşmek üzere. Hoşçakalın.